right?
Right. Always
So
listen to your
always,
doctor,
yeah,
medical doctor, naturopathic doctor. But these are good questions to ask if you've been given advice and it doesn't sit with you.
All right, Dr. Tanya. So I don't know about you, but do you get asked about can you have sex like after you've actually tried to conceive, or like you're waiting in the, during that waiting period, or even actually when you're pregnant?
I do. And it's a very common question. It's kind of like the exercise question. Can you exercise? Can you have sex once you've gotten pregnant? Are you going to cause a miscarriage? Or patient will just say, is it safe? Like, Dr. Tanya, I have a really embarrassing question. I'm like, yeah, go for it. And it's really sweet. They're like, is it okay to be intimate and have sex? I just had an IVF transfer and I'm scared it's going to cause an issue. And I say, oh my gosh, that's such a good question. And it really needs to be addressed. So I think I'm going to do a podcast with Mary on it, because really, it's like, what I got explained. Okay. So the old school way, once you had a transfer, was to lie down for 5 minutes after a transfer. So like an uterine, like an IUI or an IVF, right? Once you've had sperm injected in through the catheter, or if you've, sorry, I'm like,
it's okay. This is how it goes. Okay. I'm gonna one up.
You know what I realized? I'm like, I'm just saying transfer, but people are like, what's a transfer? So
right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go through that, but I just want to one up you because I started this process earlier. And I swear at that time they were saying, like, cause I did do IVF. So in vitro fertilization, and some of the doctors say, lie in bed for like 3 weeks. It's like, are you kidding? 2 weeks.
That's
like,
are you kidding?
Way. That's totally old school. Yeah. And what we know now, like, research actually says it's bad because what you're doing is you're not letting any blood circulation going through. So it's actually bad.
Right? Exactly. And a doctor explained to me once, she said, Tanya, don't freak out. Don't worry about it, because even if you've put this little embryo inside you, you've got a uterus that has 2 walls and they close. It's not going to fall out.
Yes. Can I provide another visual if that's okay?
Yes.
Since we're on that.
Yeah.
So I call it the jam sandwich. I don't know if you know about the jam sandwich. So
no.
For those that are actually watching the podcast on their YouTube, so it's going to be like literally if you put your hands together like a prayer position, then your hands themselves are the uterus. And inside where the uterine lining is, that's the jam. And the jam is sticky. And because it's a sandwich, they are collapsed and the baby grows within it. So it's, in the anatomy books, it looks like it's a vessel. So it's open, but it's not accurate.
Right.
It's a
and think about the like a little raspberry seed is your embryo, and it's in that jam and it's staying in there. So
I love it. Thank you. I'm going to add, and now I have a better visual because I like the what did you call it? The raspberry
seed. Because you're saying like raspberry jam.
Yeah. So it's raspberry seed in the raspberry jam. Love that. Yeah. So just picture that, and that no man of anything will actually get it to come out. Because I don't know about you, but I'll have someone say, oh my gosh, but I peed right after my IVF. And they're like, oh my gosh, did I pee it out?
Totally. Okay. I'm guilty though of also worrying and feeling that way. Like once I did my transfer, I mean, honestly, it doesn't make sense. And I'm a doctor, so I should know these things. But when you're in it, it's, you have fears the whole way through because it's such a big investment emotionally, financially. And so you do every single thing you possibly can do to make sure that baby sticks. And so you ask yourself, is it okay to be intimate? And even once you're pregnant, is it okay? Because, is your husband going to poke the baby out? Like there's these strange kind of concerns.
And men are actually scared. Like men, I don't know about you, but it's like the guy's like, no way I'm going to go in there because I don't want to hurt the baby. Right.
Right.
Like, or hurt this process. We spent so much time, effort, and money. It's like that just got their Peter really scared.
Exactly. But the good news is it's completely safe. If you've had, the only time it would not be safe, I would say, is if you had, let's say, an IVF, like a retrieval, and you've had eggs recruited and perhaps they didn't get all of them. And maybe there's 3 left over and they said, don't try because you're waiting for those eggs to, be processed to be then frozen later as embryos. And you don't want to have, triplets or something just in case. But really, like, how often would that happen? Right? Like you have.
I've seen it once.
Did you? No way.
Yes. Yes. One patient
fun.
got pregnant after they did a transfer. Well, no,
Wow.
I mean, around the same time.
So with it, so right. So she was having a natural ovulation.
Yes.
Transfer.
Cycle. Yes.
And then she got pregnant with the transfer and then her own egg.
Yes.
I saw that once too.
Yeah.
But then this person only carried one in the end. Like, even though she did get pregnant, one kind of got resorbed or whatever.
That's a whole different topic.
Yes, it is. So it is totally safe to be intimate once you've done an IUI. Obviously, you can go home. In fact, it's actually nice to take a little bit out of the medical procedure, like to just not just be like lying back and having an IUI and then go home and be like, just kind of worry, or an IVF. It's like, you could, why waste an egg too? Like, what if you're ovulating? So Mary, what if you're ovulating and this is a natural transfer? You think that that's okay? Like, what if you do have twins? What?
Really good question. But I don't think it's about thinking like that. I think it's about just, are you connecting with your partner and not forcing anything? So if it's there, if the mood strikes, just do it.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Unfortunately, most of the time there is zero mood because you're so focused on, doing all the technology that it's like the relationship kind of goes out the door, really.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity to connect. It's like, can we connect is more the question.
Right. I think I asked that question because those are all the fears that lead you to even not necessarily wanting to. So if you're asking that question, absolutely, hell yeah, connect, because it is so important also to connect outside of the trying window. And why stop yourself when you're, you actually are in the mood and you've just done a procedure, you are pregnant. In fact, it's lovely when you're pregnant because all the hormones are, present, and, it just adds to it. Some people aren't in the mood when they're pregnant, but if you are, why not take advantage? There's no risk. That's the biggest message, is there's no risk really. Even so, I had subchorionic hematomas, which is when you have blood clots.
Let's just talk layperson, please.
Within the uterus, right next to the embryo. And I think that's one case where the literature says that with exercise, you should be doing pelvic rest. So exercise shouldn't occur for 24 hours until the bleeding stops. So that could increase your risk of a miscarriage. And when you're bleeding, really, you're not going to be wanting to be intimate, but that would be the only time I would say probably not a good idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then to piggyback off that, I always ask, do things that you will never regret later.
Yeah.
Or don't do things so that you don't regret. Right.
Right.
So whatever the question is for you, ask yourself, if the worst happens, will I regret it?
Yeah. Will you blame that?
And if that's there, then you might, choose differently.
But it's also important to know that.
But it doesn't.
It's blame is self-inflicted because it's safe. It's okay to be intimate. So if we let that fear go, then you won't have to blame yourself later.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
What's the percentage of like miscarriages that are to do with egg quality? Like, how high is it? Something like
85%.
Okay. Like is it that little? I thought it was closer to like 90%.
Oh, I love how you said, is it that little? 85% is really good. But you're right. I mean?
Because
I totally agree with
if you understand that stat, then you won't kind of go back. Let's say you have a miscarriage and then you reflect back and you just say, oh, that had nothing to do with that. I exercised. I did abdominal crunches. I lifted that heavy bag. I had sex. I had a little bit of alcohol. Oops. Like just all these things that you just, you blame yourself for. And really, most of the time it's egg quality. So please don't blame, and try to enjoy and thrive through your journey. And that also means connecting.
And I really want to thank you for bringing that up, because isn't it true that when you go to a fertility clinic, and even though they'll test the embryos for chromosomal normalcy, and by the way, we have that podcast with Dr. Laura Marshall, and so you guys should totally check it out. But we just question when things don't go our way. So let's say you don't get pregnant in that cycle. Isn't it true that we automatically think, oh, it must be me? There's that self-blame. It's like, I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. And it's like, you know what? We need to learn to trust ourselves more often and not fully listen to what the doctors say. Because of course, medical doctors, they're always looking for pathology. So they always offer it as the first line. Like when you have a miscarriage, oh, well, what could be wrong? But really, it's like we need to actually look at what's going right. And sometimes there's an anomaly. And it's okay to do tests to make sure, but we don't want to fall prey to there's something totally wrong with me and it's my fault.
Right. And sometimes it's literally down to the chromosome. Even we learned in that episode, when you have a PGA healthy embryo being transferred, right? That it literally, it's, 30% of the time even though it's like 70, more than 70% has to be healthy genes in our chromosomes within that embryo in order to be considered PGA healthy, right? PGTA, right. So in order to, let's say you end up not getting pregnant with that, but there's a 30% chance of not. So that 30% chance can't be going back to you for blame. Oh, I couldn't, the baby couldn't implant, or it's a lining thing. It's my fault. Like there's something wrong with my immune system, or I had sex, back to that, like anything, like you'll just blame you or all the other possibilities, but really it's probably down to the egg and the embryo.
It is probably down to the egg and embryo. And I'm going to give you like my firsthand experience. Okay. In right before I conceived Zoe, we did a couple of embryo transfers, three, was it 2 or 3 failed embryo transfers? So the automatic go-to again is, oh, it must be Mary. It must be like, I'm not able to carry or something. There's got to be something going on there. Like, why did I miscarriage? Why did I have a chemical pregnancy? And why did it just not work out? Right. So then I could, and it's easy to do because everybody will go to let's try something, everything but the kitchen sink approach. So they invited me, they recommended that I do the intralipid, which is an IV of fat cells so that I wouldn't knock out the embryo. They offered the embryo glue so that they could shove it in me so that it's like a glue to keep it there. But you know what? I don't know. I just had this feeling. I'm like, sometimes doing too much is just not so good for you.
Yeah.
And I trusted, I came from that place. And I'll tell you, it was difficult because of course you second guess. It's like, oh, but what if I'm making the wrong choice? But just my gut said, I think it's just too much. I don't think my body would like so much intervention. And I stuck to my guns. And so for the last one, I did not do the intralipid. I did not do the embryo glue. I didn't even do the fragment, which is like a blood thinner, which is also quite a standard protocol. I did do the baby aspirin, which will help thin the blood, right? And I did it that way. And thankfully, I got pregnant with Zoe. And I will say this, because they also gave me some kind of antibiotic, which was a regular protocol at the time. It's the only time I would get sick. And I was deathly sick. I was like coughing so hard that when I actually got the positive, my husband's like, this is not going to last. You're going to like cough this baby out.
It's so funny what we think. That
right?
is hilarious.
And of course I'm scared. I'm like, holy crap. Like I was coughing so hard. I was almost coughing out a lung. So if I'm always going to cough out a lung, I'm sure going to cough out this potential baby.
Right.
Guess what? Zoe was born. She is the stick around her. She is resilient. She is like a force. Oh my gosh, she's a force.
Right.
So, just know that like all these craziness that goes on in our heads, these are all just stories. It's not actually the truth.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, did I divert too much from our sex?
No, it actually just made me think about when I think it's a really important topic to address. Not just can I be, intimate during that time, but just like we almost need to rename this podcast as like the self-blame, right? Like take out the self-blame and miscarriages. But definitely not diverging too much, because I think it's a good conversation. And even when I was pregnant with our daughter, I ended up with the flu and got almost pneumonia. Had to take Zithromax, which, me and antibiotics, I just don't love taking them. I don't think I had taken them in years. But I had been coughing all night for several nights, couldn't sleep. And I thought, okay, definitely have to. And I had that same thought. I wondered, am I going to cough this baby out? Because when you go through the fertility journey, you do, especially with sleep deprivation, like you just have thoughts that are irrational, and that's okay. Like I think it's really important to just air them out.
Yes. And I love it that you're bringing that up, because, you and I, we both see a lot of actual Western physicians as well. And guess what? Their conversation is no different.
It's
They'll ask me all the time, right? It's like, Mary, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that?
Yeah.
And these are like highly educated people, right? And so it doesn't matter how educated, how knowing you are. When it comes to this, oh my gosh, we're like a little kid.
Even friends who were medical doctor friends, when we were trying at the same time, and they'd be like, okay, what position is best for my cervix? It's this angle, or like just, I did the on my back and like, legs up. And I think it's going to work this month. And it just, silly conversations. And we know that it is not silly, but not silly. So not true.
But it's so relevant that we're speaking to this.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
As a human being, this is what we do. Like, it's like, are you kidding? It's like, you have sex and then it's like, don't touch me. I'm going to put my legs up.
Right. It's
like, leave me alone. I'm going to put my legs up. I'm going to put that pillow under my butt. Right. And like, leave me alone.
Because I need gravity to bring it down. But here's the thing. These are things that we think about. And what would be nice is to actually just debunk that myth, right? That you can't just be held and intimate and just kind of change it up for yourself, because you don't have to worry. You don't have to put your legs up, and it doesn't increase your chances. Instead, what increases your chances is like, there's so many factors, but it does help to have an orgasm. I mean, we had this conversation before. You don't have to have an orgasm. Otherwise the whole, there would be a lot less children on this earth because you make babies without orgasms.
Totally. So Tanya, I think what we're going to need to do, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's like, we're going to do one or maybe like multiple podcasts on all the myths that we have going around. Mm-hmm. Like, it's insanity how much sometimes people come in and I'm like, what? Where'd you get that from? Right. So we'll do one or two or three, like just to debunk a heck of a lot of myths that are going on around there. And you know what? At the end of the day, people will still do it. Like you and I did things like I definitely did the pillow under my butt thing. And
you're in the middle of knowing, it's not going to make a difference.
But we just still want to like go through it to really tell you like,
what would work, what wouldn't. Yes,
for sure.
And also just to help you reduce your anxieties, and so that you can kind of change the conversation in your head.
Love it. And this also brings me back to, oh my God, I'm so excited that, later on we're going to do a boot camp together, because all the type A's that want to like make this process faster, it's like, we've got your back.
Right. Totally. Because we were that.
We were totally that. And I wish I had this. Right. And that's why we're going to do it. Like, we're going to do it awesome. Like, let's go boot camp, like 3 days and like, no nonsense.
The ins and the outs, how to navigate.
No pun intended.
I love it. Yes. Pun intended. Ins and outs. And what to ask your doctor when you go to the fertility clinic, like down to like how to navigate that. We don't want to be like that cookie cutter patient and, find out later that you've suffered and you could have done this, and this. We're going to just educate you so that you feel like you are empowered, because going through this process, you lose all control. Like you feel like control is gone. So we're going to help you regain your control.
Totally. So go to myfertility.com and like, I think we may have a little sign up so that you could just, because we don't know exactly when it's going to come out, but it's in the process. We're so excited about it.
Just get registered.
Everybody just needs to pre-register so that you're like ahead of the game, and you'll feel more like empowered and hopeful, and like part of a team rather than feeling completely alone in all this, which is totally how it is, right? Like the journey is so freaking lonely. It's like, drives me crazy. Anyway, okay, let's not belabor that. Yeah. And anything else about sex before we
anything else? Just have it.
Just have it.
Don't stop. It's safe, no matter what procedure, unless your doctor tells you and advises you otherwise, obviously. So don't, take our advice over theirs, because obviously every situation is an individual one.
Yes. Good point. Thank you for sharing that. And so we're going to actually use a disclaimer and say, hey, everything that we say here, it can be advice, but we're not saying that, like, the disclaimers that, this is actually not legally advice, right?
Right. Always listen to your doctor, medical doctor, naturopathic doctor. But these are good questions to ask if you've been given advice and it doesn't sit with you.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Can't wait for our next episode. See you guys later. Okay.
Yeah.